Summer, vacations at the beach, backyard barbecues, days at the park, fishing, butterflies, and also thunderstorms, floods, droughts, forest fires, smoky sunsets, and of course, panting dogs. So, summer seasons have been trending hotter across the US, and the summer of 2018 continued that overall trend. The June to August period was the fourth hottest on record per NOAA data going back to 1895. But if we look at the entire May to September warm season, that period actually averaged as the warmest on record across the US as a whole. Now, there wasn't anything really notable about the extreme hot days, but the warmth was very persistent from the start to the end of the summer, and that's really what kind of boosted this summer to that sort of number one ranking place when we look at the entire May to September period. And we had below normal temperatures at times in different areas, but the country as a whole averaged above normal nearly every single day throughout the entire May to September period. And this plot here shows the daily average temperature for the last year across the US, with the red bars indicating the days that were warmer than the 30-year average, and the blue bars indicate the days that were cooler than the 30-year average, again, on a national basis. And the persistent nature of the hot weather this summer was really what made that, again, that number one ranking this year, not the magnitude of those individual days throughout the summer season, which for the most part featured mostly modest heat waves, but they just pretty much lasted the entire summer season in many areas. Now, this plot here shows the average temperature for the May to September period for each year since 1960, and you can see 2018 was significantly hotter than the previous record holder of 2016. And this plot only shows data back to 1960, but 2016 was the hottest summer period on record going back to 1895 per NOAA data. So if you beat 2016, you've effectively reached the new number one spot going back to 1895 as well. Now, the steady warming trend is quite notable, and if we look at the more recent period since 1981 and we look at cooling degree days, which is an index used to help gauge weather-related cooling demand, that is electricity demand for air conditioning usage, that trend is pretty much the same. Note that while the overall trend is warmer, we're seeing that trend in both warm and cool summers, and so you can see that even the cooler dips from in the year-to-year period here are trending on an upward trend, and certainly the hottest summers are getting hotter with time as well. So the overall trend is certainly an up one during the summer season across the US, at least during the last 40 years or so. Now, I did mention that earlier this summer wasn't that notable from a record heat standpoint, and if you look at just the days that were above 90 degrees for a basket of 270 cities that have data going back to 1960, you can see that if you just total up all those days across all those cities at top 90 degrees, you can see that 2018 was not really that notable compared to summers like 1988, in which we actually lagged behind that year, and that was certainly a summer that featured some extreme record heat in many areas and a lot of severe drought as well across portions of the central US. However, if you look at days with lows above 70 degrees, you can see 2018 was near the top, and 1988 wasn't anywhere near the top in terms of the warm overnight lows. And so 2018 didn't have the highs quite as high as some past years, but the lows were a lot warmer, and so the net result was that the daily average temperature was higher than what we've seen in previous years. So the bottom line is that, again, the warm overnight lows, the persistent nature of the warmth from May all the way through September is what drove this year to be the hottest on record for that period. Again, we didn't see any long periods of cool weather across the country that kind of helped break up the summer. It was pretty much warmer than normal across the U.S. as a whole from start to end. Again, certain areas saw periods of weather that were cooler than average, but if the Northeast was cooler, then we had record heat in the Southwest, or if we had cooler weather in the Southeast, and it was really warm in the Midwest and West and Northeast, and so we had most of the country averaging above normal on most days throughout the summer season. Finally, since summer is over and winter is approaching, let's take a look at winter temperature trends. Remember that summer temperatures have been trending warmer both on the cool summers and the warm summers, but winter has really been a whole lot different. We've seen that warmer trend in the warmer winters, but if you look at just the colder winters, there's really not much trend there. If you average the coldest 50% of winters each decade, the average has been very consistent decade to decade over the last 40 or 50 years. And this is largely the fact that when we have a high latitude blocking pattern that allows cold air to build up in Canada, with the snow cover in place there, the cold air builds up pretty much as fast and to the same intensity that it has in recent decades. But when we have a milder airflow off the Pacific Ocean, we're seeing warmer temperatures than we've seen in the past, and that's simply because of the fact that we have a warmer Pacific Ocean than we've had in the past. So as the oceans get warmer with time, anytime we see a flow of air off the oceans, we're going to have warmer air than we would have had in the past. And so what we're seeing is that the warm periods during the winter are getting warmer and warmer and warmer, but the cold periods are staying pretty much as consistently cold as they have in the past. So the net result is that on a year-to-year basis, we're seeing some very, very large swings between warm and cold winters, far more than what we saw 30 and 40 years ago. So if a winter is dominated by flow off the Pacific, it's going to be extremely mild. But if it's dominated by flow out of the Arctic, it's going to be just as cold as it was 30 or 40 years ago. And so the net result is that those year-to-year swings are getting really large during the winter season. In fact, it's actually more likely now to average more than 1 standard deviation above or below the 30-year mean than it is to average within a standard deviation, which is really not the way that things normally trend. And so we're kind of really, again, seeing sort of a bimodal regime set up in the winter where it's either very warm or it's very cold, and the temperatures in between are becoming more limited. So that'll be something to watch going forward as we head into this winter and following winters to see how that evolves. But for now, we're in the fall season, summer is over, and we're seeing a period of more pleasant weather here. So the bottom line is enjoy the weather, enjoy college football this fall, and thanks for watching. Bye.